Hello and welcome to Waymaker Wednesday. My name's Ed Schoeneck. I'm the lead pastor here at Edinburgh United Methodist Church. We're so glad that you came to spend some time with us. Today I'd like us to think a little bit about abundant life. And that abundant life comes through a flow of grace, a flow of receiving what we receive from God and what we share with God. To help us to explore that a little bit, I'd like us to listen to the words of Paul to one of his churches, the church in Thessalonica. And I'll be sharing with you from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. Paul had been to visit Thessalonica. He had started that church, and it was a very young church. And it was positioned on the east and west road. So it was a very important place, a place where the gospel had a chance to spread throughout the world, both the east, the west, the north, and the south. And when he was there, he ran into a group that gave him a pretty rough time. And he ended up fleeing from that church. And he wondered what they would do and how they would hold on to the gospel. And so he was writing back to encourage them. Later on, Timothy would go back and find that actually that church was doing very well, that there were people hanging on to the gospel and preaching. But in this letter, Paul is addressing some of those things that were going on in that church, especially those who were giving him grief from the inside. William Barclay, the scholar, shares that what was happening there is there was a group who was saying that there was at least a section here, he says, that who slandered Paul. They hinted that he preached the gospel for what he could get out of it, and that he was something of a dictator. So Paul was responding to that conflict, and he was sharing his motivation for doing what he does. I'll be reading from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, starting with verse 1. Let us open our hearts that we might hear God's word for us. You yourselves know, brothers and sisters, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and had been shamefully mistreated at Philippi, as you know, we had the courage in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in spite of great opposition. For our appeal does not spring from deceit or impure motives or trickery, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the message of the gospel, even so we speak not to please mortals, but to please God, who tests our hearts. As you know, and as God is our witness, we never came with words of flattery or with a pretext for greed, nor did we seek praise from mortals, whether from you or from others, though we might have made demands as apostles of Christ. But we were gentle. Among you we are like a nurse tenderly caring for her own children. So deeply do we care for you that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you became very dear to us. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So Paul shares with them about his motivation, and there's a lot about his theology, the way he walks in the world in this. And I'm reminded as I listen to him that life is not just about what I receive from God, but the way I share what I receive. It's in a balance of a flow in and out. That's where the abundance of God comes. For example, if I'm thinking of John's gospel, you have in John chapter 10, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So Jesus came into the world. God's grace comes to us where we are, wherever we are. And another verses later, another chapters later, you have Jesus saying to his disciples, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you. You hear the connection. So that grace comes into us and through us and out into the world. It is in that receiving and sharing that life becomes abundant and full. And so the question oftentimes is, where is that balance in my life? If I'm not feeling full or fulfilled, am I in balance? Especially when we're feeling persecuted. It's interesting with Paul is being persecuted here. Because I think about our series here, Salt Life, and we're in the midst of a time of exploring when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. You know, you are the salt of the earth. You're the one who brings the God flavors to this world. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? That's the language of Eugene Peterson. And so, in the midst of that series, we talked a bit about a week or so ago of the Beatitudes. That right at the end of the Beatitudes, you're blessed when blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are they who mourn. There's the theys, and then when you get to the end of it, blessed are you when you are being persecuted. Blessed are you, because it drives you deeper, in Peterson's language, into God's kingdom. When we're being persecuted, we fall back on that place of God where God's grace can be more fully felt, and we need to have that in those moments when we're being challenged to live the way Jesus wants us to live, to not retaliate, but to live in love. But then you are salt. That's in the midst of that time and response that when you're in that place, how you respond becomes so important. So it is important to be salt when you're in those times of persecution. And here's Paul, in the middle of time, being persecuted, but not retaliating, but instead sharing the gospel and doing so vulnerably, letting them know and see the grace of God as it comes through him. See, I think a lot of this comes out of his own story, if you're familiar with that in Acts chapter 9. You remember, Paul was one of those Pharisees. As a matter of fact, in Philippians, he'll still say, to the law, I'm a Pharisee. And in that, he believed that he was like up here. He was called Saul, if you remember. And in the early part of that book of Acts, when they were stoning Stephen, Saul approved of it. And in chapter 9 begins with him being an enemy to the church, if you remember. He's decided in his Pharisaic look of things, his really Pharisee, more self-righteous, that these Christians are wrong and he's going to go persecute them. And so he's going up the road to Damascus because he's going to persecute that church in Damascus. And he meets the risen Christ on the road. And what he describes is that there's this blinding light, if you remember that story, and he's dropped to the ground. And he hears this voice say, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Who are you, Lord? I'm the one whom you are persecuting. And suddenly there are these scales that come over his eyes and he can't see anything. He's vulnerable. And the one who thought he knew everything and saw everything suddenly realizes he doesn't see anything. And it's in that vulnerable moment, it's in that place of weakness, that he's taken into Damascus, that very Christian community that he was going to persecute. And I think of Jesus. Jesus said, you've heard it said you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, you shall love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. That's lived out in Paul's life. Because Jesus talks to Ananias, one of that community in Damascus, and says, I want you to go to this Saul, and I want you to lay hands on him, and I'm going to heal him. And Ananias says, what are you, nuts? This guy's out to hurt us. Jesus says, don't worry about it. Just do what I'm telling you. It'll be okay. So Ananias goes up and he lays hands on Saul. Brother Saul, he says, Jesus sent me to you. And as he laid hands on him, there was a healing and those scales fell off. And Saul, now Paul, began to understand the nature of grace, the love that shaped him, the gifts he was being given. And that became the motivation of everything he did. Listen to his words. Paul writes, so deeply do we care for you that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, this doctrinal thing, but also our own selves, because you've become very dear to us. When we know the difference that God's love makes in our lives, there is a sense of motivation, says our founder John Wesley, to share that love with others. We receive and we share. I love John Wesley's simple rules: to do no harm, to do all the good you can, and to stay in love with God. That stay in love with God is that receiving place. Doing no harm and doing all the good you can is the sharing place. To have a balance of that makes a difference. So where's the balance right now for you? If you want to pause for a moment, and I want you to think about, where are the places where God has been in your life? Those places where you felt at wit's end, those times when you felt you were overloaded, and where and how did you get from there to here? How you got from there to here is grace. Where are those grace times for you? You can pause the video for a moment and think about those. Now, how are we sharing those? Because when we share that gift with others in need, it can make a huge difference. I remember one of those times that was down in my life. It was a very difficult place. I was in seminary. I was a student pastor, and I was going through a divorce. And it was that center weekend where suddenly my ex was coming to take away all the furniture and stuff out of the house. Never been through that. That's a very difficult weekend. And so I was wrestling with that. On top of that, a good friend in the church lost her husband, and his funeral was right at that time, about the same time that my ex was coming over to get all of her furniture. And at the same time of that, I was in the middle of finals at school, so I was trying to get all my studying and things done, and there was all that kind of stress. And I remember on that Friday night before all the moving van was going to come up and all those things, that my father called me up and said, geez, Ed, I didn't want to bother you. You know how parents are that way. But a couple weeks ago, they discovered a lump in my lung. And I'm going to go into the hospital here on that very same Saturday, and they're going to remove half of my lung. But don't worry about it. It's okay. And I remember just feeling overwhelmed, like, why are you telling me this now? I would have been up there. So it was a pretty overwhelmed time. And before I went to that funeral service, I went, and I think it was a gift of grace, to the mailbox, and there was this card from a member of my congregation. And as I read that card, I read these words: last night I had an overwhelming burden in my heart for you as I prayed. I know things right now are very tough for you. Mentioned some of the things, but had no idea what was going on at that point. Anyway, she said, trust God now as you have never trusted before. He will be in everything that you will ever need. Each place of darkness that we enter serves as God's good plan to bring us closer and to make us stronger. Quote, He will never leave us nor forsake us, end of quote. That's what he said. Believe it. And then she went on to share a little bit about a time when her husband had passed away in a low time of her life and how God had reached her. That didn't fix all the stuff that I had to deal with, and it was a very difficult week. But I went into that knowing that I wasn't alone, that there was a God who loved me, that there was a community that was holding me. And I made it all the way from there to here. Grace is good. That's the difference God can make. And so wherever you are in this time as you're listening to this video, if it's one of those difficult times, know that we're here for you. At the end of our time in this video, there will be many ways that you can connect with the church. Please do. We're here to help, to pray with, to pray for, in whatever way we can support. Know that we're here for you. And if you're in one of those times that is actually a good time for you, I'd encourage you to look around you, because I'm willing to bet that there are people that God has placed in your life that are going through rough times. And in their life, by sharing a little salt, a little light, sometimes in very simple ways, like a card or a letter, you can make a major difference. Maybe even as, how are you doing? And pausing to hear the response. Or reaching out in some way to let them know that you care. It's a great way to let them know that God cares.
Go make a difference in the world.
So as we go into the week, let us remember that God can make a difference through us. That God holds us, the one who redeems us, will shine through us. So thank you again for joining us here. I pray that this time has been a blessing for you. And as we leave, may we be open to God's grace, reminding always that the one who has created us has redeemed us and will sustain us and shine through us. So with that knowledge in our hearts, let us go and serve the Lord. Thank you for coming. God's bless.